Thank you. My name is Peter. When we talked about the SDK here at the Lisk Center a while back, I raised the question what the difference was between the SDK in its current form and simply forking Lisk. And I think one of the key things that was discussed back then is that what you guys as mathematicians were still working on is the link between the two systems, right? As I understand it, that link is not in place right now. It's still separated. So what are the key differences between simply forking Lisk and the tool that is available right now?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's easier to use NPM. The developer experience is nicer. You're right in the sense that we don't have interoperability till we get to our production SDK. But why we've released this now is actually we realize, developing a blockchain and developing a DApp is hard, and we want to get developers able to play around with it and start building stuff ahead of time. We can also learn from them. We can incrementally add improvements to the SDK. With the system we have now, it's going to be fully compatible to grow alongside the improvements that we add in. The new architecture that we've added, which is modular, will allow each new change that we ship to be added to your code base as a DApp project. So I think, what's the difference between forking it or NPM? It's that's not really the point. It's more that you can actually take this and now start building it and kind of grow alongside the Lisk project. And by the time that we bring, the production SDK, you will actually have, a much more mature project rather than waiting all that time and then just giving it to you then. And then, it takes a while to build stuff. So we kind of want to grow and learn together.
Thank you. Maybe also from my angle.
Yeah.
So yesterday we built Lisk Code 2.0. That means our, let's say, network application for the first time with the SDK. And I have to be honest, I didn't look into the repo yet, so I don't know the structure. But you could imagine that, on the SDK repository, we now have the Lisk framework, which includes all, let's say, heavy blockchain-related logic, let's say, the chain module, in the future, the DPoS module, and so on. And we have Lisk elements, which contains the lighter logic, okay? And if you're asking about the difference, then it's more like you're using the SDK to build something, and you don't just copy a mess of code like the core was, let's say, a year or 2 years ago, and try to dive deep into these tens of thousands of lines of code. You saw with the demo, when you're using the SDK, you don't have to dive into all these modules in the Lisk framework or Lisk elements. You just have to really add logic on top. But if you would have to just fork an existing code base, then it's really like a forest or like a spaghetti kind of thing, where you really would have to understand the whole architecture first and the whole code base first to make changes. But I have to also, I would say it's a very good question right now, because we spent the last 3.5 years bringing the old core code base to the state it is today, while also developing Lisk elements in order to create this SDK, okay? And for example, Lisk Commander doesn't play a big role today. We saw in the demo we were just npm installing the Lisk SDK, but the commander was nowhere to be seen, right? But in the future, this will be like a vital part of the SDK and the developer experience in creating your own blockchain. So today there's not let's say, you don't see the difference like black and white. But we're working towards that the developer experience while using the SDK will be tremendously different than just forking an existing code base. The other thing is, if you're just forking a code base, it could be modular, but then you're just forking an existing project, and an existing project is always built for a specific purpose. But an SDK is more like a general purpose toolkit. It's there, or it exists to let the developer build nearly everything he wants, with the underlying or the base technology being blockchain tech. And yes, today every single module we have in the SDK is really there just to build Lisk core. That's why it's in the alpha version. And we say not production ready because it has right now basically a single purpose use case. Of course, developers can use it already to build other things, but it's still a journey there towards doing that properly, you know. But in the future, you could imagine within Lisk framework or Lisk elements, there are also modules which are not directly being used by core, but which could be used by other blockchains, okay? Another consensus algorithm, zero knowledge functionality, whatever, you know? And then it really shines this SDK to hopefully then with the Lisk command in the future in building your own blockchain. That's a bit from another perspective. You're welcome.
Thank you for hosting us here. It's yeah, very much yeah. But
Not
also
us,
you
them.
for finding. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. What do you think are the biggest challenges for mass adoption of blockchain, and how can we help?
Want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's design and user experience. Like if we're looking at the technology, all the projects just think about scaling. They just think, yeah, we need to achieve like Visa level of scaling. That means like thousands, 10,000s of transactions per second. I think on the other hand, blockchain technology is a bit like a slow, cumbersome technology in itself. It's about trust and decentralization. Of course, it's not as efficient as just some centralized network like the Visa network. But they're all focusing on that, right? And in the last maybe 2 years, they started to like realize, damn, that's not the only thing we need to take care of. It's also design and user experience. But they're not focusing so much on it because it's still a very tech-heavy industry. And I think that's right now the single biggest blocker to mainstream adoption. If you're even installing Lisk Mobile or Lisk Hub, you need to manage your own private key. This is for me something which is very complicated for regular users because they're even losing their Facebook password, you know. But then they always have this button, forgot password, please make me a new one, you know. But they don't have it in the wallets nowadays. So it's very prone to losing your cryptocurrencies, and many people actually do that. So I think that's one of the major hurdles. Another one is just addresses. Like who is sending money to some weird obscure address? You know, they expect an image, a real name. That's it, you know? So I think like before we don't have wallets which make it as easy as just like, does anyone know Car2Go here? Or like, let's say any mobile app which requires KYC and which requires your phone number, okay? I think before it's, and which requires to add a bank account. They all have these aspects, but everyone can do that nowadays. But on the other side, you cannot expect the users to, let's say, generate a passphrase or a private key and keeping that secure. So I think like what's missing is like some user interfaces which heavily rely on proven techniques to like, let's say, verify the user, and this then allows the startup behind it be some kind of a custodian, so they're taking care of the private key management, okay? And on the other side, I think it has to be as easy as sending a WhatsApp message to send your tokens around, and that means no addresses. So it's all the design and user experience question, right? And for me right now, it's all these weird address formats and passphrases or private keys in general. Mm-hmm. Big hurdle.
Yeah, I'd also add to that on the kind of user experience side of things that, and it's definitely something that we've put a lot of effort into here at Lisk, is kind of seeing like developer experience as part of, from a UX point of view, and trying to make it not so difficult, so much of a hurdle for somebody who's coming from, you know, PHP or Node or like web development, that they can actually access it and it's meaningful and engaging for them, and they can kind of have those nice eureka moments. So definitely 100% on the user experience, but also taking the developers into account as well.
Hi, thank you. Everybody knows that the Lisk Foundation is working very hard on the software. Is there something that you can tell about the Lisk Foundation as a company, what you're working on, or what 2020 might look like?
Yeah, I think that's only
that's
me
you,
who
yeah.
can answer that. So, quick like fact sheet about the Lisk Foundation, based in Zug, Switzerland, established end of 2016. Currently, we have 3 board members. That's me as the president, my partner Oliver Beddoes as the vice president, and Benedict Schubli as a board member. And we have also 3 employees, Guido as the managing director, Machine as the legal counsel, and Camille as our accountant finance. And like the main tasks and responsibilities of the foundation is to oversee and manage the funds and to like stay legally compliant. And the second one is a huge topic. So Switzerland was 2016 one of the first countries which enabled entrepreneurs to build a foundation in the blockchain industry, and therefore like was the most attractive country to really go and build your blockchain company there. When we started Lisk, there was no other option. Today, of course, you have Liechtenstein, you have Singapore, even Germany it's possible, not sure here in Netherlands, but it's coming nearly in every jurisdiction that you can do that. But back in the day, only Switzerland. And they realized, okay, they were very quick and that was very beneficial for them because there are hundreds and hundreds of blockchain foundations, but they were a bit too quick. So what they're doing since 2016 is to like introduce new kinds of, let's say, legal requirements for these foundations, so that the whole like blockchain environment in Switzerland is actually sane. You know, back in the day it was more like yes, come, and we figure it out together. And then over the past few years, it was being figured out. So that means, for example, currently we are like a foundation in Switzerland has to undergo an audit every year. And last year we did it, and it was a quite relaxed audit. So it went through the numbers and went through a few processes internally. But this year we are going, of course, through another audit. It's required. But this audit is now quite intensive, you know. So we have to provide like an internal control system for all kinds of spendings or like expenses. We have to like create risk matrices for like, let's say, financial risks, technology risks, legal risks, etc. We have to create so goddamn many legal opinions for all the things we're doing. Like, for example, like a change which will come to our wallets is that you will be able to buy LSK inside the wallet, right? And this was like a huge drama because is it that we are acting as a financial intermediary or not, you know? So we had to collect legal opinions, etc., to stay compliant there. And this we also have to do for these audits in all kinds of things, you know? So they're coming with like these requirements, and they don't expect us to do it 100% this year because it's the first year where it's really tight. But they say, okay, hey, but in the future you will have to comply with all of these things. And it goes so far that if you have like 100 Swiss francs, a small like a physical wallet in the office where you can take a bit of money out, a cash box, bit of cash out to, like, I don't know, buy a Coca-Cola or so because the card didn't work there, but it was on the company's expense. For example, it goes so far that they now require like a full, and this is pretty normal, everyone has to do it, like a full accounting document for that to see like where it was exactly spent on. But last year that was not necessary, you know? So, of course, in Germany, for example, if we would have to do that, it's normal that you do it. But in the beginning, it was not necessary, and now it was introduced, hey, you also have to do that now, because blockchain is so new, we have to be much more careful than maybe with other Swiss foundations. So they're coming in, they're rolling in, and we just have to stay compliant and work on all these topics. Mainly, it's just documentation, it's legal opinions, it's very boring work. And like, I know that, like, for example, Switzerland is a very cool area in terms of blockchain projects because there are so many, but it's not like that the technology is being built there, right? But there are many interesting meetups and conferences happening as well, mainly around the legal and regulatory topics, but more and more also just in general blockchain. Maybe not so much the tech behind it, but the use cases, etc. And we are starting to think also, like, should we attend those? because for now we always just focus on the biggest blockchain conferences all over the world. But we also want to, let's say, strengthening the local market in Zug, Switzerland. So that's now coming as well, more likely in 2020, that we will start going to some of these meetups, conferences, etc., and start shaping the environment there together. And in that breath, also, like, we are part of many associations, federations, which are building the laws. For example, we are founding member of INATBA, which is the European Association for Blockchain Technology, but we're also like in 2 or 3 associations just for Switzerland. And there we are actively participating in working groups so that we can shape the future of blockchain law together with the regulatory bodies. They're pretty open, but they need explanations, of course. So that's also what we're doing. So all this legal stuff, finance stuff, etc. The cool stuff happens in Berlin.
Max, just a quick question on when you mentioned about buying the small denominations of Lisk through the wallet. Can you shed any light on, is that going to be in conjunction with, now I'll probably pronounce this wrong and every German person in the place will kick me out, Wegbank or Wegbank?
No, it's not.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. There was just rumors floating around.
I know many rumors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of rumors,
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah.
But
so
no connection to that one.
okay. So it will be straight through Lisk. Is it going through a bank? Is it
It's
in conjunction with the bank?
Going through a third-party service,
Okay.
which we're working together with to provide this service.
Okay.
It's not custodian,
Right.
so that means like you have no danger of losing the money unless the service is not working correctly. But it's a service in place since many years, so trust has been built. We also know the founders since quite a while. So it's nothing to do with WEG Bank, WEG Bank, but it's another service provider.
Okay, and can you shed any light on how large the denominations will go that you can buy through the
again?
wallet? Can you shed any light on how large of a denomination of Lisk you will be able to buy through the wallet?
How large?
How large?
Yeah, so yes, of course, you asked like how much you can buy, like how many Lisk, for example. We will start with a very small amount because of this, all the legal stuff. We will start with, and it's again a goal. The goal is just for people getting into the space. The goal is never with Lisk to get people investing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's just to get people start checking the platform out, and then when all these cool projects are finally here, to start using the platform. So the starting amount will be 1,000 Swiss francs a year. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So not much, but like I said, my goal is just that people buy 5 Lisk and check the platform out, and then become a community member.
Yeah. Onboard them.
Onboarding, exactly.
Perfect.
That we can here now say, okay, install the Lisk mobile app and charge, like just buy some few Lisk with it and try it out.
Gotcha.
Okay.
How will Lisk make money?
Currently it won't. We still have, okay, Bitcoin went down a bit today again, but like we still have a lot of money. And we're thinking like, God damn, this SDK took so long. Why? Because it's so complicated. And we don't want right now to defocus on other aspects where we could potentially make money. But of course, we talked about this topic quite a bit already with Oliver, within the foundation, within Lightcurve in Berlin, the development studio, working on the platform. And there are multiple angles we could take, but we will not take any angle until the end of 2020. Like, for now, it's really just focusing on the product, focusing on the platform, and then later we can see what we want to do even. Or if we say, okay, hey, let's just build the platform and then maybe start focusing more on other projects like a new blockchain application. But that's all in the stars right now, just focus, Lisk, building it, that alone is so damn complicated enough.
I have one more question. I was there last year in Berlin at the
at the meetup. And you introduced us to the business development team, of course. And the goal was to raise to get more money for this token, right? What's the goal for the business development team right now? Because I know Jacob's working on the new academy, the new site is coming. Like, what's in the pipeline for the Lisk next to the development?
So our business development team never worked on getting the price up.
No,
So in August, a new head of business development will join our team. With that, business development will not be contained within marketing anymore. It will not be managed. Before that was managed kind of by me. We will now have finally a dedicated person who can focus on that and grow the team, you know. A thing which has been a bit missing in the past, but not so much because the SDK was not there, but now we have something to work with. So the main focus will very likely be to be in Berlin, present at all these startups, all these SMEs, at individual entrepreneurs who want to build a company, to see really what are their requirements for blockchain and what do they think are good use cases for the future. I think this whole ideation part is something where we can go really deep in, because let's be honest, who really knows what blockchain technology will be used for in 5 to 10 years? Everything is just a big fantasy right now. It's slowly getting there with mainly gambling apps and decentralized exchanges being used right now. But I think we are all expecting much more from this technology. So that will be a big chunk of the work, just ideation, seeing really where blockchain can be used and fit in. But there's a huge body of work which they can do also alongside that. For example, the last thing Jacob was working on was on analyzing competing projects, where we analyzed 3 different ones, analyzed really from a business, development, and more like research aspect. And this already helped tremendously in just understanding them, you know. And that's a continuous effort, because we always need competitor analysis of other projects to see where we could maybe take the edge and do something better or different. Then you have the whole thing with exchanges. They need constant maintenance, so that like they're being updated about new versions, that, for example, now with Lisk Core and the soft fork being activated at 10 million blocks, we needed to update them. We needed to sometimes also provide them with further information. And then there's this whole shebang with getting on new exchanges, which sometimes really require 50 pages of documentation from us. So that's quite intense sometimes. So that's another thing they are working on. Next to that, it's a quite small team right now. But next to that, we are also now creating a new department called Developer Relations. And that's for now the much bigger focus than business development, because this Developer Relations department will talk directly to the individual developer to really shape that developer experience. And with that, it means getting Lisk Commander up and running, integrating the first commands, but it also means like writing proper documentation, creating explainer videos, webinars, etc. And like we saw today already, Lisk building first proof of concepts, just to inspire people, but also which can act a bit like a demo, which they can just take a look at in terms of the code and see how we did it so they can copy that. So next to BD, it's a rather small focus. We have developer relations, which gets now into a much bigger focus because the SDK is there. And for us, it's of utmost importance to get developers into our community.